Tapes and Tales.
You're listening to Tapes and Tales. My name's Dan Jagger. In each episode we bring you 3 stories loosely based on a theme. And the theme of this episode is control. Controlling people, people controlling you, nature controlling everybody. So if you want to find our website, we're on tapesandtales.com. Our Twitter is @tapesandtales. And we're on iTunes, so you can subscribe and download each episode as soon as it's released. Stories today from Bridge Williams and an interview with a mysterious PR man. But first, here's a story called Broadcast of the Foxes by David Hartley.
Broadcast of the Foxes. The fox has made a nest in your satellite dish and feasts on your children's fingers. You can't get a good signal. You can't watch your favourite programmes. You can't keep up with the news. The fox, still hungry, lifts his mighty wings, spreads his crackling feathers through a ripple of reds and greens, then splits himself into a million tiny pieces like a firework of fur. Scattered, he seeps through the mortar of your home, seeks pathways in the cracks in bricks, finds damp to bathe in and mould to lick. But when he finds a rip in the wallpaper, he peers through and he watches you. He watches you think. He watches your thoughts. He watches you cross the room. He watches you pick up the phone. He watches you shout into the receiver. 999, you shout. 999. I need the newspapers. Tell the newspapers. 999. The phone is dead. The fox chewed through the wire 3 days ago. He has eaten your children's fingers. Upstairs, your children are crying. Your signal is intermittent. You cannot watch Great British Bake Off. 999, you shout. 999. There is no one there to hear you. The sun slips away as if scared. Twilight creeps out and reclaims the world. The fox rises from your bricks and reforms. He is still hungry. He leaves one eye behind to keep watch and stalks the streets for flesh. He is Night Flame. Every step of his paw is another pothole. Every swish of his paintbrush tail leaves a tag across shutters and walls. His stare beheads flowers, his bark topples bins, his claws awaken every sleeper to sweats and shivers. He is your every complaint, your every inconvenience. He is your shame and your shadow. He is your simmering rage. You've stayed up late. You've given up with the phone, no answer. You've shut out the wails of the children and you've sat down to write a letter. Your anger swirls like lava. You grip the pen like a talisman. You carve the words so deep into the paper they will never escape. The fox hears your scritching, hears your scratching. He hears every letter you etch. The message amuses him. He forgets his empty belly. He turns tail, heads for home. 999, you write. 999. Police, I need the newspapers. No one will help me. No one cares about me. 999. I need the newspapers. Get me the newspapers. His teeth shine in the moonlight. Your children pick at their wounds and sob. Your signal is weak. You've missed Downton Abbey. 999, you write. 9999999. You post the letter through your own letterbox backwards. It lands upon the soggy pile of your doorstep. It will never be read. The fox has found a vixen. He has brought her to your home and they copulate in your satellite dish. They suck the last bits of flesh off the bones of your children's fingers. They watch you while you sleep. They snigger every time you squirm. The fox likes you. The fox finds you amusing and he feels sorry for you. You made tasty children and he promises not to eat too much more of them. A few toes perhaps, maybe an eyeball, and the vixen might need an arm to chew on, but just one. He likes you. He will tip the balance in your favour. He will keep you going for as long as he can. He will not make it easy for the others. The weather is on shuffle. It burns hot 1 hour, spits hail the next. It rages through a storm and then settles to stillness. Each shift adjusts like a valve in your brain and you pop awake and fume your way back to sleep. You didn't see the forecast. You don't know if this was predicted. You missed the news. The fox and vixen don't feel weather. Nothing disturbs their hunger, nor the licking of their bones. Nothing stops their barks and giggles. Nothing distracts and nothing shames. The fox knows he nearly has you. The fox knows the time draws close. You wake and illuminate your face with your phone. You open metro.co.uk. You find a comments box and press for the pop-up of the keyboard. 999, you type. 999. I need yous to help. I have a story. Bring your newspaper to me. 34 Albion Street. Please come now. Police won't help. 999. I need the newspapers. Please help. The fox impregnates the vixen. Your children bleed over the bedsheets and weep themselves to sleep. There is no signal. The comment fails to post. You watch the buffer circle spin and spin until the phone blinks out and dies. The day breaks. The fox feels the morning crack awake like a sudden whip and he knows it is time. He knows the day has arrived. Phone, letter, internet, your options are gone. There is nothing left. There is one thing left. The fox watches the tiny muscles of your face and reads your thoughts. They are as slow as lazy clouds, but clear. There is nothing left, but there is one thing left. You stare out of the window. The day is here. The moment has come. The vixen slips through the floorboards. She spirits along wood grain and finds your children's bedroom. It stinks of gangrene, but she doesn't mind. She will tend to them, look after them. She will resist the hunger in her belly. She likes your children. She means them no harm. You stare out of windows. You stare out of every window. You move from room to room, from window to window. The fox follows, your shadow, your ghost. He blows and blows at the walls, wills them to fall, urges you to make the move, screams at you to go. You stare out of windows. It looks cold outside. The fox leaps and lands on your back. He wraps his tail around your neck like a scarf and breathes hot breath across your cheeks. His heart thumps against the back of your head and the warmth washes through you like steam. You break out into a sweat. You open the window. You put a hand out and feel the air. It wants you, you think. It wants to take you out. You climb out of the window and emerge onto the street. The fox unravels and leaps to the roof, his heart like the pulse from a frantic star, his tail as alive as a newborn bonfire. You look at your neighbourhood. No one around, no one out to play. Mess everywhere, fox shit, bird shit, teenage litter. Firebombed cars, shattered windows, gardens overgrown with strangleweeds and rib cages. The sky is a sickening red. The clouds look ready for war. Everything is silent, nothing moves. Everything waits, except you. You march and march, toes wrinkle in the mush, and you reach the main road at the end of the street. You look left, you look right. No cars, no life, no nothing. Except one thing, a fox, mangy looking, sitting on top of a traffic light stuck on red. It's watching you. It's grinning, you think. You take a deep breath and hold it. Every hair on the fox's body rises. His tail stops. His claws flex. He is ready. He is your every grievance, your every irritation. He is your shame and your shadow. He is your simmering rage. You are standing at the end of your street, at the end of your time, naked, freezing, sweating, and angry. You open your mouth, and the stench of the world rushes in. 999, you shout. 999. I need the newspapers, bring the newspapers. I need to tell my story. I need help. 999, tell the newspapers. Across the land, the foxes hear your broadcast. Your fox barks and receives 1,000 barks in echo. Your signal was strong. You don't understand. How long will you survive? 999, you say. The foxes are coming. The hunt is on.
Tapes
andTales.
That's David Hartley and a story called Broadcast of the Foxes. Now, we normally bring you fictional stories on Tapes and Tales, but recently I sat down with a friend of mine who works in social media and PR, and we just got talking about how manipulative the media is, and this is the recording that we made.
So my core skill is being a writer. That's what I do. And journalists, do deal in fact and truth, and I create content for the internet. And obviously, there's not enough of that already, so we need people like me to come on and do more of it. The objective isn't to tell a story per se; it's to get eyeballs on a screen, and that can make you quite cynical and make you do things that you wouldn't necessarily do if you were a proper journalist. What's called black hat SEO techniques. So one way of cheating at it is to buy links. And it doesn't work anymore because Google's changed its algorithm. But back in the day, you could buy links and that would make you appear higher up in Google. So usually you get what's called a penalty, where Google goes, right, I think you've been doing something dodgy, so we're going to knock you down a few places or you'll disappear for a while. It happened to Interflora quite famously. They disappeared the week before Mother's Day from the internet. So one day you type in flower delivery and Interflora would be there, and the next day they were gone. So identifying areas of conversation where you're going to get some interest. So working backwards from the headline, kind of like mild outrage, or getting people to admit something about themselves. The best one we did was about self-service checkouts, and I wondered, because I've done it, I've been tempted to do it. There's ways of cheating at the self-service checkout. We did a poll online, and we just said, have you ever done this? Yes or no, and then what methods do you use? So putting, selecting a cheaper item, putting something in the bag without scanning it, and then how often do you do it? So we asked this question. If you want to get your data published on the BBC, you've got to be like a credible organisation, I don't know, like the NHS or the M&S or something like that. You've got to have a nationally representative sample. For most national newspapers, it's 1,000. And for the Daily Mail, surprisingly, a lot of people find it surprising, they're actually dead rigorous with their polls, although they did cover our poll. So with this story, we got the figures, and they were quite interesting. It was a talking point, but they weren't robust enough to make a story. So we were looking for a headline. So if you're smart enough, you'll ask the question in a way that gives you the headline you want. That's the skill. It was about 1 in 3 that said, yeah, I've done it at least once. Most people never. So 66% of people never done it, which isn't interesting. But then when you say 1 in 3 people admit this thing, it sounds a bit more interesting. So then we had our headline, which is 1 in 3 admit to cheating at self-service checkouts. And then you sort of snigger to yourself, and you think, I can't believe people are picking it up. But of course, it's not really news. It just ends up in the newspaper. It's not news, a lot of it is rubbish. So we put this story out, and this was about 4 years ago. And now, if you go on the Wikipedia page for self-service checkout machine, Wikipedia cites our research as one of its references. If you think about all the other stories that are out in the world that may or may not be completely true, all these facts that you know, A lot of it comes from people trying to get PR for a product or a brand and thinking, how do we get the media to talk about us? Let's do some research on this. Because we didn't do it as an exclusive, we just put it out. We didn't embargo it either, which sometimes it's smart to do. So we put this thing out, so the Daily Mail picked it up, and then when the Daily Mail picks something up, regardless of what people say, people read the Daily Mail and they nick their stories. So Daily Mail did it, and then it went mad on Twitter, and people were just Gary Neville got involved in the whole thing, and he said, good, I'm glad this is happening, maybe they'll start putting people back on checkouts. And that's when I started scratching my head and thinking, this is absolutely mental. Like, something that we came up with for a sort of how do we get traffic to our website experiment ended up people were talking about it as if it was true. And it wasn't true, because it doesn't matter how many people you poll, unless you poll in the volumes that andTales and these big, huge research companies do, you're not going to get an accurate reflection. But it doesn't matter, because what you're not saying is something important, like people don't trust the NHS, or, you know, it's not political, it's not ethical, it is ethical, but it's not big enough news to really matter. It's trivial nonsense. So you can be a little bit liberal with your facts. So once we did this, I say we, it wasn't we, it was me. I was the one sort of like doing it, and I still say we just because it deflects a bit of the guilt from me, because I still feel bad that, because you've got mums who will go to their, like, there'll be some woman who's just got a Kindle or something and she'll go, oh, look at this story, and people think it's real. And that's the weird thing. Once you get something on the internet, people believe it. So the next one we did was about smoke breaks. Someone was bitching about someone else for going out for a fag every hour. And she was like, it's not fair though, because I don't smoke. So I'm sitting at my desk working, get paid the same as her, and 10 minutes out of every hour. And she came up with some rough calculation. I thought, actually, that's probably true. I wonder how many people really resent smokers. So you take that to its logical next step, which in my cynical tabloidy mind is, I already had the headline in my head, like, over half of Brits think smokers should have their wages docked. And you go, yeah, outrage, let's drum up some outrage. So we did it, and we put the poll up, and people just weren't answering the poll. I don't know why. So we're really struggling to get the numbers, but we got it up to about 200, and I thought, that's enough. As you would expect, if you were to sit in the pub and a group of 10, you're going to get a bit of a split, and the split was roughly 50-50. As soon as you onto 50.5%, you say the majority. Most Britons think smokers should have their wages docked. They don't. What you do is you ask the question, you sort of funnel them to the answer that you want by how you ask. So we did that, and the thing that made that story was, I forget his name, but he's a really high-profile pro-smoking campaigner. Picked the story up and was fuming, which was brilliant for us, because he started, he was obviously quite influential in the media, so he started reacting to it, i.e. ringing up the papers and saying, I want a right to reply on this, I represent smokers and I think that's outrageous. And I was like just loving it, because the more he got angry about it and tweeted about it, the more coverage it got. So basically, I trolled two different demographics. I said smokers are bad because they're not working hard enough, but non-smokers are just as bad because they're on Facebook rather than smoking. I'd say most. I'd say 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 bits of content marketing you see are to raise an online profile. Again, like I say, if you're the NHS, your methodology's got to be knob on. If you're doing a bit of a light-hearted perceptions about industry story, yeah, you want your methodology to be good, but you can't eliminate all selection bias. When I do my research, I try and get it as accurate as possible, and I try and make it as unbiased as possible. But even your best journalists will tell you they'd rather you ask questions in a certain way to get an interesting headline. So I'm not tricking anyone.
Tapes and Tales.
This is Tapes and Tales, and the theme of this episode is control, and that was the confessions of a PR man. Our next story is called Buses, and it's by Bridge Williams, and it's read by Daniel Easton.
Buses by Bridge Williams, read by Daniel Easton. It's been really hard, she said. I've just had to She closes her eyes and the corners of her mouth lift slightly. Rebalance, realign myself, reconnect. Her eyes open on the last word and her hands come together at her chest, her fingers pointed upwards, not in prayer, but in an appropriation of his gravity. He guesses it's unintentional, as much as any affectation can be. They are sat in the window seat of a pub. The late afternoon sun shines through the frosted glass. She's sitting cross-legged facing him, her legs up on the seat. He is sat in the corner, only half turned towards her, his arms spread out along the back and side of the booth, one leg across the other. I was in a really, really bad place when you guys left me. I seriously fucking fell apart. He nods, ever so slightly, and but for a constant furrow in his brow, he remains expressionless. I don't know. She pauses to look out the window. A bus passes, interrupting the light coming through with a second of rapid flickering. The pub's name is in a negative in the frosting, and when the bus is past, he realised the letter C is lit on her face. It's just that I've had to claw back the shell of my life, because I had nothing after it blew up, nothing. It lights in detail the texture of her foundation and the crepe paper wrinkles beneath. The bottom kick of the letter C casts onto the corner of her mouth, exaggerating the way in which they naturally turn downwards when relaxed. These are the lines that have started their slow creep down towards her jawline. In 10 years or so, they will make an island of her chin, surrounded by jowls and seeming to move independently of the rest of her face. He thinks of a novelty nutcracker his grandma used to have. I mean, I had to be like, Rachel's restarting, or I was going to stay like that forever. She often spoke in the third person. With all that's been going on, I've just been in this mess of grief, sadness, confusion, and she trails off, looking for the word. All of that. But now, I hope I'm starting to have some, hope. It's just like... She exhales. Her eyes look upwards at some imaginary source of inspiration. I've been emotionally eviscerated, you know? Her eyes return and he holds her gaze. He nods very slow and slight, from the torso rather than the neck. A contemplative nod whose mass dampens the direction of his thoughts. But you know, she shrugs, leans forward and sips from her drink. Her red lipstick stains the straw and he catches a brief scent of her perfume. Rachel has been down and has got up again before. Another bus goes by and the fluttering light has changed from a C to a T. A group of men burst into laughter at the bar. One of them leans in to put his pint on the bar. He wipes his mouth, still laughing, then gestures for the barman. I mean, I don't know how privy you are to everything that's gone on, but... She pauses, waiting for encouragement or inquisition. He shrugs very slightly and looks across to his hand, still outstretched along the back of the booth and picking at the varnish of the wood. She continues. Well, I just think it's a little strange that I'm getting all the blame while certain parties are completely off the hook. It's not like I forced anyone to do anything, like against their will or anything. Almost inaudibly. Once again, it's Rachel that's the bad guy. Rachel has fucked everything up. He picks at the varnish under his fingernail with his thumb. I put my heart, my soul, my fucking energy into that group. He rolls it between his thumb and forefinger. And now I'm just out of it. It fucking sucks, it really does. She looks out into the room, shaking her head. There is a father and son sat at the table just across from them. In the pause, the conversation drifts over to their table. The son is of university age, tall, awkward, slightly drunk. He leans forward into the table and his shoulders gesticulate with his words. It's the first time his dad has come to visit him. The first time he has seen him in his new town with his new life. The father is sat back, a half pint in his lap, one hand scratching at the rim of the glass, listening to how his son thinks. Moving would be much easier if all his books were on his computer. How these days that's the thing that weighs the most. When I was packing, I found a letter that I wrote to him at the beginning of all this. She smiles, sighs, and gazes at the frosted glass. He knows that she is setting up some bitter irony. It was a letter saying how this was the only opening we'd have to call it off before it went too far. I was saying we should call it off because it could mean the end for both of us. For both of us. She scoffed, throwing her hands upwards in her lap, the action emphasized by the sound of her bracelets clattering on both wrists. He noticed her mascara had clotted on the hood of her upper eyelid, the soft puff of flesh between the eyebrow and the lid itself. He wondered at the small track mark. Was it made by the thickened eyelashes or by a slip of the applicator? She blinked and the lashes met them exactly like some strange printing press. The eyelash then. I was like, oh, hello, hindsight. She clutches her belly in mock pain. Again the clatter of bracelets. Another bus goes by, but the sun has sunk below the supermarket across the road, and so now only shadows play on her face. A greyness has settled in the pub. It is that strange evening dimness in the break between sunshine and dark, when the natural light is still enough to wash out the artificial, but not enough to fully illuminate the room. The father and son now sit in silence. The son is leant on the table, one hand propping his head, the other turning his pint glass on its beer mat. The dad is still sat upright, one leg across the other, looking down into his pint in his lap. He's thinking about the camp bed he will sleep on in his son's bedroom floor, and whether he will have to sit in the kitchen and talk to his son's housemates. He doesn't know what he will say, and he suddenly feels old. He misses the son's mother. Rachel sucks at the last of her lime and soda, leaving only ice and a mangled slice of lime that she has poked out with her straw. It reminds him of an upturned sea creature on a rocky beach. Anyway, I guess it's too late now. Certain parties don't want me around, they've made that all too clear. She raises her eyebrows and blinks her eyes pointedly, pausing just long enough to reopen them with the pupils cast downward to the floor. He still hasn't moved. Well, it's good to catch up anyway, she says, reaching down for her bag. I appreciate you still making time for me. It's good to know someone still actually cares. I just wish, She puts her cardigan on. The thought is lost somewhere. Ugh, whatever. They both rise and head along the bar towards the door. The group of men twist out of the way, raising their pints to let them pass without interrupting the flow of their conversation. They're talking about someone else. How the person never should have fucking moved in with them in the first place. Out on the pavement, the streetlights are on. A slight wind blows a fast food wrapper and some cigarette butts into the road, which are then sucked up under another bus as it goes by. The people inside are lit obtrusively against the dark sky, each blank face looking forward into the back of another's head. A woman on a phone, another reading a book, a man with his head resting against the window, and a mother with a small boy stood on her lap touching her face. "Thanks again," she said. "It's been so nice to talk." She comes in to hug him, both arms raised so that they go around his neck. His arms come up under hers. He feels her head against his and a deep sigh on his neck.
Tapes and Tales. Tapes and Tales.
So that's been Tapes and Tales and our episode about control. Special thanks to our contributors, Bridge Williams, Daniel Easton, David Hartley, and of course our mysterious PR man. Tapes and Tales is produced by me, Dan Jagger, and the assistant producer is Dave Wilson. We'll be back next time with some more tapes and some more tales. So thanks for listening. See you later.